Okay, marketing, sales, and service students, this is the beginning of the lecture series for the Precision Exam Marketing 1 Test Prep. We have chapters 7, 9, 10, 15, 16, 17 to cover so that we can get that second certificate for some of you. So I'm going to start with chapter 7 here. And chapter 7 is all about market segments and competition. So I'm just going to go through the slide decks. I'll make some notes here or there. I'll talk about some page numbers, so you'll need your textbook nearby for some of these key questions, and then we'll go from there. So let's start this up. Alright, so there's 4 sections to the chapter. 7.1 is going to be focused on market segments. Then 7.2 is position for competitive advantage. 7.3 compete for market segments, and 7.4 talks about learning about the competition. So in 7.1 we're going to describe the benefits and categories of market segmentation, and we're going to explain how to identify market segments and determine their potential. So you already hopefully did the Nearpod with the vocabulary, so words that are in blue are the vocabulary words and the definitions that are after them. So we'll start with the first two, market segmentation. So the benefits of segmentation are encompassed in these two terms. So we have market segmentation, the process of dividing a large group of consumers into subgroups based on specific characteristics and common needs. So an example of that is our school. So if our Blue Nation Student Store is looking to segment the population, we could segment it in so many ways. So we could do, we want to sell this product to just freshmen, or we want to sell it to staff versus students, or we want to sell it to females, or we want to sell it to just the tennis team. So that's how you segment out for market segments. Second term, mass marketing. It directs a company's marketing mix to serve a large and heterogeneous group of consumers. So a mixed group of consumers. Marketing mix, again, was those 4 Ps that were covered in chapter 4. And now we have segmentation categories. So you have geographic segmentation, which is classifying consumers into markets based on where they live. So that could be a city, that could be a state, that could be the western region. So that's what they mean by geographic. And then you've got demographic segmentation. So demographics are the descriptive characteristics of a market, such as age, gender, race, income, and educational level, and they are not limited to just those. There are more demographics than that. All right. So in this chart, you can see that the demographics they're using is actually education level. So it's showing like earning levels of people who have no high school diploma all the way up to a professional degree. So that kind of segments out people based on that parameter. Segmentation categories continuing. So the term psychographics has to do with people's interests and values. Product usage, the definition of that is how frequently consumers use a product and the quantity of product used. Behavioral segmentation is a part of that. Benefit expectations. So benefit segmentation is this. It divides consumers into groups depending on specific values or benefits they expect or require from the use of a product or service. So benefit segmentation, for instance, would be truck people versus car people. So truck people really don't care about things that would only be on a car. So there would be a benefit to having like raised tires and that sort of thing. So that's segmenting out based on benefit or value. Okay, so first checkpoint question, why do businesses that believe in the marketing concept use market segmentation rather than mass marketing? And so some of that information is going to be in section 7.1 from pages 182 all the way to page 187. And so if that information was not in the slide deck with those demographics that I talked about, you'll want to look at those page numbers to answer this question. And this video will pause now so that you can do so. Okay, moving on. So we're going to identify and analyze market segments. So another key term or vocabulary term is market opportunity. It's an identified market with excellent potential based on careful research. Identifying possible segments. So number one, you would select a market or product category to study. Number two, you would choose a basis for segmenting the market. Number three, you would gather information for analysis. Number four, identifying the segments that exist in that market, because some may not. And then number five, use market information to choose the markets that present the greatest and least amount of potential. And obviously, when you identify the least amount of potential, you might want to go after the greatest potential because that's going to get you the most money or value. All right, so when we're determining market potential, here are some terms for that. So market potential is this. It's the total revenue that can be obtained from a market segment. Not profit, total revenue, total dollars that would come in. Next term would be market share. That's the portion of the total market potential that each company expects in relation to its competitors. So we can take Coke and Pepsi, for instance. They're like the leading companies and have the largest market share of anybody in the soda category. And then you have smaller ones from there, but market share is percentage of the entire market for your segment. Okay, checkpoint question number two. What is the relationship between market potential and market share? And that information, if it was not in these slide decks, will be in 7.2 from pages 189 all the way to 93. All right, this video will pause now so that you can answer that question. Okay, so now in 7.2, we're going to talk about explaining the various bases for positioning a product to distinguish it from the competition, and we're going to talk about describing the three common positioning strategies. And so the term that you've already seen in vocabulary is market position, and that is the unique image of a product or service in a consumer's mind relative to similar competitive offerings. So you can think in the shoe category, Nike has a very good market position, especially with athletics, versus like Keds. All right, so basis for positioning. You have product feature, you have price and quality, you have use or the application of something, you have product user, you have product classification and competitors. So you have two different products here, laundry product A and B, and so you can see kind of how you make decisions for positioning. So those I already listed. Checkpoint question. Number one for section 7.2, what are 6 common bases for positioning? Those were in the slide deck, but if you missed them, you can go back, or you can go in your textbook from pages 189 to 193. I will pause the video for you to make that answer now. Moving on. The next terms that we have to do with positioning strategy. So the definition of positioning strategy is outlines how a company will present its product or service to the consumer and how it will compete in the marketplace with other businesses offering similar products and services. Consumer perceptions, definition of that is the images consumers have of competing goods and services in the marketplace. So it's just how does the consumer view a Ford car versus a Chevy car versus a Lamborghini and so on. And that also encompasses what the competition does and also what the business environment may be. So checkpoint question number 2 in section 7.2.2. Why should businesses be cautious when using competitive positioning? And that information is covered in pages 192 and 183. I will pause so that you can answer that question. And now we're on 7.3. So we're going to talk about competing for market segments. So this information will tell us distinguishing between direct and indirect competition, talking about distinguishing between price and non-price competition, and then describing the benefits of competition to consumers. All right, so some more vocabulary words. Direct competition is this: competition in a market with businesses that offer the same type of product or service. Indirect competition would be, it occurs when a business competes with other companies offering products that are not in the same product category but satisfy similar customer needs. Okay, so checkpoint question number 1 in section 7.3.1. So that's going to be page 194 in your textbook. The question is, how do direct and indirect competition differ? So you're just comparing and contrasting the definitions of those two terms. And we will pause so that you can answer that. Moving on. Now, price and non-price competition. Definition of price competition: rivalry among businesses on the basis of price and value. You see this a lot with gas stations. So if you see a corner with 4 different gas stations on each corner, you're going to see, for the most part, that their prices are pretty similar because they want you to come to their brand. Non-price competition is when businesses emphasize elements of the marketing mix other than price. Okay, checkpoint question for section 7.3.2, and that's going to be on page 195 and 196. The question is, when is non-price competition effective? We'll pause here so that you can answer that question. Moving on. Benefits of competition. So, competition. It forces businesses to offer reasonable prices for the products and services that consumers use. It encourages improvements in products with the addition of... Alright, sorry about that. Just a little interruption in the middle of a video lecture, but here we go. So, we were talking about competition and the benefits of competition. So, we're at number 3. It encourages businesses to continuously search for new product ideas. Number 4 offers consumers that benefit of a wide variety of products from which to choose. So let's say there was only one gas station in the entire world. That's a monopoly, and the problems with that is that they could charge whatever they want. They will give you the gas that they want to give you and not give you variety. And so those are kind of the drawbacks. So that's why competition is a good thing. Okay, so checkpoint question in section 7.3.3, which is pages 197, 196, and 197. So the question is, how do consumers benefit from competition among businesses? We'll pause so you can answer that question. Moving on. And the last section, 7.4, we're learning about the competition. So we're going to talk about discussing the types of information businesses need to know about their competitors, and then describing how businesses collect market intelligence. So the types of competitive information are these: pricing strategies, knowing what your competition charges so you can kind of adjust to that. Distribution decisions, so Amazon pretty much does that perfectly, so everybody else has to play catch up, like Target and Walmart and so forth. Then you've got product and service planning. You've got promotional efforts, which is print advertisement, radio, television, and so forth, internet advertising, and then competitive marketing position. Checkpoint question for 7.4.1. You can find that on pages 198, 199. And 200, the question is, what are the 5 types of information that businesses need to know about their competitors? And here are some more terms. So we're going to collect competitive information. The term market intelligence is the process of gaining competitive market information. The information sources could be like when you go to a trade show. And a trade show is exhibitions where companies associated with an industry gather to showcase their products. So that's one way of actually gathering market intelligence, because you are there at the show, you're showing your stuff, but then you also walk around and see what your competition is doing. Ethics and information gathering, there's a whole segment of business ethics that we could go over, and it does go over a little bit in the book. Under section 7.4.2, pages 200 and 201, and 202 and 203, and you can get that information there. So checkpoint question for those pages I just mentioned. The question is, what are some of the best sources of market intelligence? We will pause so that you can answer that question. And that is it. So if you did not get the answer to some of those questions, you will need to go back to the textbook and or these slides so that you can get that information and move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 9.